Hi everyone, we're at AILA. This is Thursday. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Margaret.
And we want to share with you what do you do when things go wrong at the consular level. Margaret's going to share the top 10 things and then we'll talk about it, okay? Because things go wrong all the time. So let's get to it.
So the first takeaway is to make sure that if you have a question or if you need to update the NVC, that you do it through the form of an inquiry. In the past, there were tons of emails just floating around, but now you won't receive a response. So just making sure that you know that you must submit an inquiry if you have to update or if you have a question in regards to your case.
And it's relatively simple, so just go through the process and putting it in instead of directly emailing. Now, pro tip, if you visit the consulate often and you know the chief and you know the person who's working on the case, of course you could directly email them. But generally that information is not available to the public. So and even if you do have the direct email to the chief who's operating that case, it's still a good idea to still put it in the inquiry so you memorialize exactly what you're requesting.
The second big takeaway has to do with interviews, and it's making sure that you have all of your documents ready for the interview. Again, sometimes you've waited years for this opportunity and it's a one shot to get everything right. The last thing you want is for things to have to go to administrative processing and for you to just have to wait and potentially get your case denied.
So Margaret, what are the documents that they're supposed to have?
It really depends on the case. So if it's a bona fide marriage case and you want to have proof of your marriage, you can bring photos, your marriage certificate, the original one, birth certificates, but it really depends on the case.
Yeah. If you're doing a business type case, sometimes they want wet signatures, meaning like the original offer letter, your diploma, the big one that the schools issue, for different things that to prove that your case is real. Because again, you're not trying to prove your case is real. You're also trying to prove your case is more real than the fake cases that went before you, right? These officers are trying to sniff out who's real, who's not, who's trying to deceive the government. So you want to do a good job preparing your case and show them you are authentic, you are real, this job is real, and you're going to do America good.
The third biggest takeaway is to make sure that after your interview, you go home and you take the time to write down all of the questions that were asked and all of your responses. And this is especially important if your case does go to administrative processing and now your attorney has to represent you for further processing. You want to give them a clear record. Sometimes your memory will fail you later. So just taking that time after the interview to sit there and just write everything down is really important.
Because sometimes the interview is only 10 to 15 minutes. So it's actually not too difficult to write down exactly what happened. And sometimes there's more than one officer that interviewed you. There's one officer that might have said they wanted to prove you and then they went back and they came back and said no. Well, exactly what happened, right? And so you don't know what they wrote in the system, but you know what you encountered and what you saw. So record everything. We had a previous case where a client went to an E2 interview, got denied. And we were just shocked because it was a pretty good case and they denied it on the most bizarre reason. And then we had to apply for a B1, B2 tourist visa in order for them to come here to rebuild the E2 business in order to apply for E2 again. But at the second interview, we told the client to go back to the officer and said, please adjudicate my E2 again if you just in this application. And the second officer, the second interview reviewed it and said, we totally should have approved it the first time. We're really sorry that you had to go through this ordeal. And they approved the E2 as well as the B1, B2 and apologized to our client.
The fourth takeaway is to remember that these consular officers are not attorneys and they only have about 2 to 4 minutes per case, meaning you have to be super organized, you have to be very clear and concise and make them want to approve your case.
And the thing is, they don't want to read, right? So don't go show up and just shove them all these documents. You need to prepare the documents. They need to ask you, and you need to be prepared to articulate and answer accordingly. And if they want to see anything, you can quickly find it and give it to them. Don't just put everything in a plastic bag and you have to like shuffle through it. But again, there's no time for that. And you might say 2 to 3 minutes. That's not enough time. It is enough time. You can learn a lot about a person within that 2 or 3 minutes. So they'll ask you a lot of things. And if you're fumbling, if you're saying weird words that doesn't feel real, they'll smell it right out and deny your case. For example, if you're going for a tourist application, you've waited 2 years in order to do a B1, B2 basic tourist application. And they say, why are you going to go to the US? What are you going to see? You've been waiting for so long. What are you going to do? If you say tourism, your case is going to get denied. Like be specific, be prepared, be clear about your documents.
The fifth takeaway, which I thought was really important and useful, is that you can send the consulate a memo in addition to what you already took to your interview. And that way it prevents your case from going into administrative processing. Sometimes if a consular officer is suspicious, they might look for reasons to deny your case, and they might have that time to look for those reasons. So if you send them a memo in addition to everything, it might help your case.
Usually complications happen, right? Life happens. No case is perfect. If there's one particular area that's really weak and you want to explain more, and this 2 to 3 minutes just doesn't quite get it, you could prepare that detailed explanation with exhibit list and explaining everything. You don't need to explain your entire life history, but if it helps them do this interview for you, then doing a memo might make sense.
The sixth point is basically to be proactive and addressing any issues that might cause you to be ineligible right at the front. Don't leave anything up for the imagination. Just be clear and address it up front.
The thing is, people will judge you. People will judge you regardless of what you do. That's something I learned in life. They're going to judge you either way. So let them judge you based on what you want them to judge you on. If you just show up and you don't say anything, you don't prepare any documents, you give one-word answers, they're going to judge you by your skin color, they're going to judge you by the way you look, the way you dress. They're just going to have a prejudice. But if you show up, you dress well, you're articulate, and you have documents, and it's clear, and you're smiling, and you have a good personality, and you have humor, people will judge you, but let them judge you based on your own terms.
The seventh takeaway sounds like common sense, but it's basically to be respectful and to not get defensive. We do have a lot of clients that feel like attacked. They don't understand why the officers are questioning certain parts about their background. But just remember, it's not personal. Unfortunately, there is a lot of fraud that happens. So the officers are just trying to do their job of, like you said, sorting out the bad cases against the good ones.
And conversely, don't be deceived if the officer is really nice to you, because they're trained officers as well to smoke out some of the bad things. So if they pretend really nice, they're talking to you, they're being your buddy, and they're like, hey, when's the last time you smoked, yeah? And then you say all these things, they could deny you on the spot. So be careful. You are formally swearing before an officer that you're telling the truth, the whole truth, and anything you say can be held against you in your application. So be very, very careful. If they're mean, don't take it personally. They're doing your job. If they're nice, well, you should still be very careful what you say. Even if you've never, I'm not telling you to lie, okay? That's not what I'm saying, but be careful what you say that might be misinterpreted as having done something bad.
The eighth takeaway is basically to adopt the mindset of showing versus telling. So that consists of having all of the documents ready, having, again, these very concise answers, keeping it 2 to 3 sentences max.
Be specific in your intent, on what you're doing, how you're getting it, and not just very broad overall statements.
The ninth takeaway is to make sure that every time you're reaching out to NVC, whether it's through email or it's through the inquiry system, that you're keeping in mind that you're basically creating a record for yourself. So if you have to defend yourself further down the line, you have all of this email, or you have all of this proof in writing.
And conversely, if you're doing it every single week, it looks bad, right? Like if you're just being super impatient and you're just bugging them week after week after week, and if what you write doesn't show you have good manners and you're mean, it makes the other person on the receiving end less likely to want to help you. So be polite, be formal, be clear, be respectful, and write accordingly. So at the end of the day, you're being judged by everything you do. You want to present your best self at all times.
And the final takeaway is to be mindful that you can escalate the case at a certain point. We did have a client who had been emailing NVC throughout the course of the 2 to 3 years without any sort of resolution. And at some point, it needed to be escalated to the supervisor. And that is finally when their case started seeing some momentum.
This happens more often than you think, unfortunately, right? So we had this other case, there's 11 requests for evidence from NVC. And at some point, it's just the clients couldn't do it themselves. So we took over, did everything, and the case got approved. The case that Margaret is talking about, 2-3 years, SB1 approved, SB1 denied, SB1 just pending forever, and then finally escalated to a director and showing everything. They're already about to come into the US, but then, the director said, All right, fine, we'll give the SB1 again since we already proved it years and years ago, right? So sometimes if you have the right and it's clearly, you deserve it, escalating it might work. But again, even then, the client, we discussed a long time, how should you go about approaching it? They were gonna write this really strongly worded letter and, complain and everything. And I said, no, just still be polite. Be polite and tell them exactly, thank them for their work, tell them what your alternative is, and then how everything is still gonna be all right. And then after that, the case actually got reopened, And so how to do it and how to say things matter tremendously. Words have power.
So last but not least, anytime that our team is preparing these types of cases, we always make sure that we're super detailed. We prepare our clients. We have mock interviews. We have other people checking our own work because, again, it's very hard to communicate with NVC to get the results, to get the interviews. So we want to get it right.
Be your best self. I am more of a traditional guy. I print everything out. I calendar everything on paper as well as on Outlook to know and remind myself of certain things. And then preparing for the interview before going, dressing up nicely, knowing how to be articulate, and then, smiling. All of this takes practice. And even I still do this, right? And we do it with our clients as well. So just do your best and it will be fine. And if you're stressed out about it and you don't think your best is good enough, find a family friend who is better than you and practice together, right? You don't need to necessarily hire a law firm to do practice interviews with you. Or maybe you already did several practices with your lawyer and your firm and you still need a little bit more. Do it with your friends, do it with your relatives, as long as you can elevate yourself. All the best to you. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. We want to thank AILA for putting up this amazing conference, inviting these amazing speakers, sharing their wisdom so we can share it with you. So thank you for watching. See you at the next session. Bye-bye.